Hello everyone and welcome back to Suzerain, where our projected economic growth is finally looking positive, but our government budget is looking terrible. And that may not last, our growth, we'll have to see. And projected economic growth doesn't actually pay the bills, so goodness knows what we're going to do. In the meantime though, we need to attend the Victory Day, but I'm a little concerned about that. So we can start off with the lobbying effort in Assembly. Chief Strategist Lucien Gallet has prepared a well-planned lobbying effort in the Parliament which could specifically sway on defence of peace the upcoming constitutional vote. The plan includes lavish parties, gifts and some political favours. Should we go ahead with the plan? I have 2 personal wealth, let's use it. If we get the constitution passed, it would be well worth it to do so. Okay, attending the Victory Day. Sergei drove us to the city of Yen, the stronghold of Swedish nationalists, for an event organised by the opposite parties to discuss current events. In reality, it was probably a publicity stunt to show Swordland, that the leaders of the assembly could sit around the same table. The NFP, which governed the city, undoubtedly had the biggest hand in the organisation of the meeting. It was not a coincidence that it fell on Victory Day. Today was a day of special importance in Swordland. Every year on the 14th of March, proud patriots from all ages gathered to celebrate the end of the Swedish Civil War and Tarquin Sol's victory. Yen had survived one of the worst atrocities of the war, and his Victory Day celebrations were the most jubilant in all of Swordland. Originally, only Peter and I were scheduled to attend, but after learning about new developments with the Ishval Erson case, Nia Morgana was invited as well. Representatives from both the PFJP and NFP told us they wanted to talk about the case in more detail. Nia departed wholesale first. Peter and I left on our own a little later. Peter was sitting next to me in the presidential car, skimming through the morning newspaper in silence. Suddenly, Sergei rolled down the soundproof window. Mr. President, Vice President, we're about to arrive at the end Centre of Culture. Miss Morgana has already arrived and she'll be waiting for you. Peter raised his head to look out the window. He folded the newspaper and laid it beside him. Wow, that was too comfortable of a drive to have been this fast. See, I wasn't joking, Sergei is the best. No kidding, my driver Sveta can't hold a candle to him. Although I sure wouldn't mind navigating her dangerous curves one day. Peter, we've had a talk about this, you need to stop wandering your eyes too much. Peter laughed. Nah, I should ride with you guys more often. I can't believe I can actually read on the go. You're embarrassing me, sir. I'm no special man. It's the Kadila. Sergei took a left turn and drove through the tiny streets of Yen. The city looked surprisingly clean and well maintained. There were no signs of the destruction the city suffered during one of the heaviest battles of the Civil War. We slowed down in front of the Carnival Plaza overlooking the massive concrete building with a giant sign that read Yen Centre of Culture. It looks like the NFP mayors have really transformed the city. Wasn't this an abandoned warehouse for the longest time? I believe it used to function as a rebel militia base, and a little while after the Civil War. Oh, right. The Black Battalion. The Black Battalion, let's just find out who they are. If you remember, they used places like this to organise in the 30s. Lucky for us, Seoul handed them long ago. Well, maybe not all of them. Their democratic counterparts, like the young Swords, don't live on after all. Sergei stopped the car and went outside to hold our doors. Here we are, sirs. I hope you have a great day. We got out of the car and walked towards the entrance of the building. Every spot around us was decorated with the flags of Swordland. The comically large amount of flags almost enveloped the buildings around the plaza in maroon, white and gold. At the entrance, Casaro Cabena, the head of the NFP, was waiting for us in his iconic brown suit, watching the sky. Looking at the sky, so full of himself. How did this clown convince the PFJP to have trilateral talks with them anyway? He's a dangerously competent man, Peter. We should be cautious with him, absolutely. Seeing us arrive, Casaro approached us with a smile. Thank you for being here on this glorious day, Mr. President and Vice President. As the former mayor of Yen, it's an honour to welcome you to our fine city. Thank you, Mr. Cabana. Thank you for organising this. The representatives of the PFJP and Miss Minister Morgana are already inside the private meeting room. Hopefully we'll be finished before the festivities start. Shall we? I don't think I'm going to get any help from Casaro in terms of the constitutional changes, so I'm not going to try. Just follow me. We entered the building and walked through a massive conference hall until we approached the door towards the back of the building. We'll have the meeting here. Kusara opened the doors for us and we entered the meeting room. PFJP leader Franz Richter and his deputy Manoli Suhail, I don't think we've met you before. Oh, we might have done actually. Was already seated at the left-hand side of the table. As soon as we entered, Nia came to greet us. After showing our seats, Kusara sat down next to his deputy, Remus Holstron. Again, another deputy we haven't met before. This is such a meaningful day. Thank you for coming here on behalf of your parties. But despite the festive atmosphere, we and the PFJP want to raise a few important concerns about the worrying state of affairs in Swordland. Kusara stopped for a moment to check his notes. Very worrying indeed. Mr. Richter and his analyst has been working on an analysis of the blood problem, and as soon as they brought it up, we give our support without reservations. The blood problem? Mr. Holt, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the analysis is about racism and radicalisation in Swordland, and our main topic is the case of the Ursa vs. Swordland. Please don't try to spin it. Of course, Miss Suhail. Mr. Holstrom just wanted to point out that the analysis was mainly focused on topics related to the Bluish people. We should really have some Bluish representation, otherwise it's not worthwhile, and it's not fair. Mr. President is completely right. Hold on, guys, let's hear them out first. We are representing the parties of the Assembly here. We did invite the representatives of the Workers' Party of Bluish to join us, but they refused. Another proof that they have a different agenda. If they were genuinely concerned for the plight of their people, they would have come today. But their people shouldn't worry. The Swordish patriots are here to defend them instead. I'll hear you out, but know that I will not act on anything before talking to the representatives of the Bluish community. Let's get on back on track, ladies and gentlemen. I want to give the word to Mr. Richter to explain the issue. Thank you. Our analysis of the current tensions between the Bluish and Swordish population displays a worrying picture. As much as I hate to say it, the threat of the Bluish Freedom Front is getting real again. The situation with Rumberg and Wayland is very concerning. The increasingly discriminatory acts of Governor Bergia are resulting in the radicalisation of many young Bluish people. Distressingly, the number of radicals have almost doubled after the implication of our armed forces in the Operation Bear Trap. Ah, that's a shame. That was the one we had to agree to get a trade deal with the kind of fascists down in the south, if I remember correctly. I must also point out that the recruitment numbers of the BFF have significantly increased within Nurus communities. Peter Fanny looked through his papers. That is correct. The reports now show 39 Nurus sanctuaries in Bergia and are classified by red threats by the authorities. Many priests in the region are also suspected of having ties to the BFF. The Religious Harmony Bill would have directly crippled this network they established with our sanctuaries. As the threat of the BFF poses a direct on, this issue requires direct actions and bear direct results. I'm disappointed by the lack of action taken by the USP administration. Your bill would have unnecessarily raised the already high tensions. You did well by vetoing it, Mr. President. Our suggestion is to finally enforce the official language of our country as stated in the Constitution. We are working on the Unified Language Act. It's directly aimed on the breeding grounds of the Bluish Freedom Front. The police have infiltrated 32 BFF training grounds in the remote towns around Bergia that pose as middle schools. Despite all the evidence, similar schools keep popping up. And so-called activists are constantly blocking Governor Bond's attempts to stop these schools, claiming he is attacking their right to language. You can't take away the Bluish's people's right to be educated in their own language. This is insane. Please read the proposal carefully. It does not take away anyone's rights, it only gives the state a way to control the radicalisation in these schools that teach Bluish nationalist propaganda. And according to the Constitution, the language of Swordland is Swordish. If nothing has been done to enforce it, then we are breaching the Constitution. This law simply enforces it. With all due respect, Mr. Cabana, this bill is not strong enough. The Bluish language should be completely banned. You know, people like Mrs. Suhail or Miss Morgana will never even vote for your watered-down bill. Remus. Kusara repositioned himself on his chair and continued. True, it does not ban Bluish language or Bluish education. It will instead make Swordish mandatory to learn for everyone in this country. This will only decrease the tensions in the long term. That's a fair point. However, the wording of the bill is far too vague to work as intended. It gives the government too much power over educational institutes. I'm not opposed to making Swordish mandatory to learn, but I agree with Franz Richter, it needs to be worded better. I disagree. The language is quite clear and is in line with the Constitution, but we can still improve it, of course. It is true that it gives more control, but it's a necessary compromise. I'll have to read it in detail to decide if I can support it. The PFJP will not allow the bill to pass the Assembly. Let's not make statements the party hasn't agreed on yet. Manoli looked furious. She opened her mouth to respond, then read the room, and closed it again. As if the PFJP has the influence to change the outcome. If I may continue with our analysis, the situation is already connected to Rumberg, as everyone already knows. In case of a future incursion, BFF forces in Swordland become an existential threat. I don't know what to say here, because if we go, say, when we read the authority of the governor, that's going to really annoy the NFP. Let's try that one. With all due respect, I already received this information from Internal Affairs. Tell us something we don't know. Just let me finish, Mr. President. He adjusted his tie and continued. The next dealing with the armed militants crucial in the short term. I'll be honest, I myself have underestimated this threat, but judging by the current climate, a spark is all the BFF needs to start violence on a mass scale again. Our analysis matches with what the Ministry of Interior shared with us, but despite this fact, we believe the Ministry is hiding information from us, which is actively fueling the tensions behind the scenes. As much as I now support a strict response against the BFF, it must also be coupled with the expansion of rights to the British people. That's the only way to fight against radicalisation. That is BFF propaganda. What rights are we talking about here? What can a sword in Swordland do that a bloat cannot? You are using soft language as a cover-up for your willingness to negotiate with terrorists. You are a BFF apologist, Mr. Richter. Remus shouted this last sentence. Peter tapped on the table to get his attention. Please don't raise your voice, Mr. Holstrom. The mood in the room had turned sour. You seem like a really nasty chap. Is the USP that desperate for Mr. Richter's support now? Maloney bellowed out a loud laugh. Mr. Vetten is the last person to sway the PFJP. What is that supposed to mean? Can we return to the topic, please? Let's not all insult each other. You heard the man. Please finish your point, Mr. Richter. Yes. Our administration should take all possible opportunities to expand the rights of our British populace while stamping out the BFF militants in parallel. This must be the long-term strategy. However, we require your support with the more pressing matter. This might have very significant consequences for British citizens and may serve as a dangerous trigger if we're not careful. Friends, just did a Manoli. She carefully placed several pieces of paper in front of her. Mr. President, Vice President, Mr. Minister, Miss Minister. As you know, there's a major Supreme Court case at the moment. Shah Urson is suing the government of Persia, Felix Bron, for infringing upon the liberties of the British people, and demands that the constitution be revised. Because of the argument and the implications, Felix Bron, and consequently the very constitution of Swordland, is under trial. The fact is, he needs to be punished and the constitution be reviewed. Please explain. Nia raised her hand and spoke. I was actively involved in this case. Because of the implications with the Constitution, there is no way the Supreme Court will agree with Ishval Urson on all of the points. Not if all three parties of the Assembly support Urson together. We can put pressure on them, and we only need them to agree on a few of these points. All parties, is the NFP really willing to support Urson, Mr. Cabana? For peace and harmony in Swordland, yes, perhaps we must clarify the details first. What are your plans and suggestions? In short, the plan is to release a unified statement to the justices declaring our support for Urson, explaining why this is so important. The only good result will be if the Supreme Court reiterates its commitment to the pillar of unity and solism. Mr. President, despite previously being against it, I now completely understand why Swordland still needs solism. We need unity more than ever, and Article 6 is that unity. We do not need solace unity. Cassaro stared Remus down and continued, I don't think these two get on very well. If the court reiterates the definition of sword in Article 6 to be as an all-encompassing term, they'll be acknowledging that Urson and other people like him are indeed protected by the rights of the sword's people, which they are. As a result, the resettlement policy in Daria would be reversed, opening the way for Governor Bron's removal and the de-escalation of tensions in Persia. Is that true, Miss Morgana? I trust you to tell me. That is correct, Mr. President. Doesn't this mean that the existence of the British people is literally not being acknowledged? Exactly. Our current constitution fails to recognise the British people. It's time we abolish the inherent racism in it. The citizens of Swordlands are swords. The constitution clearly defines that in Article 6 it encompasses everybody. That shouldn't be up for debate. What racism are you talking about? Solism is based on civic nationalism, not ethnic. I do not understand why some would go against such a broad and inclusive law. Don't see the commies criticising their identity contanen, when in fact the country is filled with different ethnicities. Why are you comparing... No. I see your point, but I still understand why the NFP has a sudden change of heart. I disagree. This case is important for the greater good of the Swedish nation, and that is what the NFP stands for. All I'm asking for is, even in United Contana, the Malevian doesn't call himself Kiovian before Contanen. Why is it that Blues cannot do the same? Why does Sweden have to be divided? You have a point, but I must point out that Contana is the word for geographic entity, unlike sword. This is Swordland. You can subscribe to whatever idea you want, but if you're a citizen, you're a sword. That is how nations work. The reality is that the Blues do not respect nor recognise the laws and authorities of Swordland. They rather separate themselves from swords and protest the very laws that protect them. So they can cry about injustice and ask Swordland's enemies to come and save them. I personally do not agree with the Blues of swords solist crap. I can't believe the words being thrown around at this meeting. And what is the position of the PFJP? I personally somewhat agree with Mr. Cabin on this, however our position as the PFJP is that Article 6 does indeed discriminate against non-swords. Having a positive outcome for this case alone doesn't suffice. We agreed to come together in support of Ishar Urson, but we believe our statement should include the acknowledgement of the inherent racism within the Constitution. We must use this opportunity to show the flaws in the Constitution. If the court agrees that there is a fact conflict between articles or recognises the and the Hawker Court is going to listen to that. Besides, we do not agree with your inherent racism hogwash. You have to say that is your party's opinion and does not reflect the NFP. We won't take part in that. That would make the statement look weak and disorganised. If there's no consistent strategy, I don't think it would work. Now, what is the most likely outcome of the case? The first and most likely opinion is that the Supreme Court completely ignores the arguments and rejects it in its entirety. If they ignore all of the points and strike against Urson, Governor Bron will be free to follow his discriminatory policies without obstacles. And in a possible future case, the court's interpretation of the Urson case will be the basis of all future rulings, which opens the way to suspending the rights of non-swords. It would effectively erase any progress that's been made regarding Bluish rights, and would embolden anti-Bluish proponents to follow their actions freely. We definitely can't let that happen. Absolutely. This is precisely why our expectation is to see a different result this time. The stakes couldn't be higher. And the significance of the case. I'll be straight with you, Mr. President. If the court rules against Urson, this will be likely to turn BFF campaign for a British revolution. We ask everyone to recognise this. I and the NFP are ready to push for de-escalation and aid our nation during this dangerous time. I'll be completely honest, I would have never expected that from you. Remus was visibly annoyed, but kept himself silent. Because the case is now in the hands of the Supreme Court, this ruling will influence all further implementation of the law and the decision-making of the lower courts. We have the Minister of Justice here with us too. I'm sure she would not disagree with what I've just said. Nia did not comment, but nodded. I'm afraid Mr. Cabeno is right about this. If the court ignores this case now, this may turn into something massive. Therefore, we have to pressure the court not to escalate the already high tensions. What do you think will really happen if the court ignores it? Another all-out BFF rebellion, Mr. President. In my opinion, that would be the preferred outcome. If enemies do truly live within borders, I'd rather them show their faces rather than later. This is exactly what those damn rums want. They're ready for war and waiting to use their tensions inside Swordland against us. We cannot allow that to happen. We definitely can't. I think I have enough information to say we are able to be deep in the mud here. Peter laughed at his own joke attempt, but no one else reacted. Well, I think the NFP's stance could do some good for the British without provoking the establishment, but even that might be risky right before the vote. But the PFJP's stance is too radical. I think it will only antagonise the Supreme Court even further, and make them give a worse ruling. I think it might be better to keep our administration out of this. I'm not sure it's worth the risk right before the vote for our reforms. We might lose all our progress, but the decision is yours. I think I've heard enough. Okay, so I intend to join the statement. The question is which version? Do I do it with Mr. Cabana or do I do it with Mr. Richter? Because this is a real kind of flashpoint. I'm actually going to go with Mr. Cabana's outcome because he has actually come to the table and I didn't expect him to. I'm not sure it was the right option, but I think it might be the best. The USP will join the statement. We will argue that Bluish people consider swords before the law, as Mr. Cabana suggested. That's great to hear. We'll get to work immediately after the celebrations. Nia Morgan doesn't like the sound of this. Neither do I. As much as it may be needed, this will only strengthen the sworderism of the USP. We all know swordists don't agree with swordist nationalism. We'll talk about that later, Remus. Swordists will have to listen to me this time. We will also support the effort for the sake of a positive result. We appreciate all your comments, ladies and gentlemen, but now the USP stance is clear, we should probably end the meeting there. After bidding our farewells, Casaro took us outside the building to join the Victory Day event on the plaza. We might also need Mr. Casaro's support in the future, so I think it's for the best that we did what he said. Was it the right decision? Who knows? Who knows indeed. Okay, Gazem shares sale result. Read the Gazem divestment financial report and see the results of the sale of state shares. The board of Gazem approved and concluded the sale of shares. The final transaction results of the divestment have arrived in this report. Minister Hall and Minister Manger have facilitated the entire process with former President Alfonso, and the returns on their way to the State Treasury. Very low returns of only one government budget. That's not going to save our banks, is it? Not in the slightest. Our budget is still very, very low indeed. We're going to have to do our best here. That is Chapter 2 completed. Chapter 2 New Swordland. Very interesting. Okay, a call from Marcel Caronti. I was in my office looking through the agenda for the upcoming meeting at the Ministry of Economy. The meeting was going to be about the ownership of the Big Four, the four largest companies in Swordland. Heart of Swordland, Berger Steel, the SSC, and the Nedham Might Group. Some of these companies were controlled in part or entirely by the state, the others were mostly or completely privatised. I had the power to change that. The phone rang and I put the agenda down. Greetings, Mr. President. I'm sorry to disturb you for such an important meeting, but I thought now would be a good time to talk about our arrangement. I'm sure you'll agree that the support my network have been giving your administration has been nothing but beneficial. Half of the non-state media of the country has been sharing positive news about you and downplaying negative events. There's always more you can be doing for us. We'll go for middle ground. Mr. Rain, we essentially acquire Lockhaven Times and we've been coordinating media publishing across the three largest broadcasting organisations. Have you been supporting us? Not really. British Democrats condemn President Rain. There's nothing much yet. Supreme Court holds Governor Bron accountable, that's good. Nobody in the country is supporting you as much as I am. I heard him knock on the wood. On another note, out of goodwill, I'll share a key piece of information. The Lothar Group has contingency plans if you decide to do anything rash that would disrupt their empires. You can't blame them, can you? Imagine someone trying to take away your authority and personal wealth without your consent. I don't see why we should be enemies. Exactly. If everyone plays their cards right, it will all be fine. Now, let's talk about those cards. Since the start of your campaign, you've adamantly promoted a planned economy. Going by that, I'm worried that you will attempt to nationalise Swordland's largest private corporations. Nationalisation as a concept goes against everything my father built and stood for. If you want to go down this road, I must insist on you excluding HOS from your plan. That is my most important request. You may recall that one of the terms of our agreement was that I asked you for one favour. Well, this is it. We don't need to be enemies. No, we don't. As long as we both understand what entails not being enemies. I always keep my end of the bargain, Mr. President, don't forget. You better keep yours as well. Before we end the call, there's actually one more thing I'd like to discuss. I will be blunt. Mr. Tusk is unfit to be the spokesperson for the Lotherberg Group. His archaic thinking has only preserved a status quo that benefits himself and precious few others. It's high time something changed. Who do you have in mind to replace him? Who do you think? Me, of course. Here's what I propose, a win-win situation. If you could use your powers to make Berger Steel Tusk's main company state-owned, he would lose considerable influence, which means I could take over. If I take over with your help, I'll be forever indebted to you and support all your goals, be they re-election or something more. How does that sound? Oh, I'm concerned that if we rely on a steel export with somewhere else, so I don't want to have issues with steel. I'll have to think about it. Just think about it, that's all I'm asking. Well then, I've taken up enough of your time today. This has been a productive call. I'm not sure I want to give Marshal Cronte absolute power. Thank you for your time, Mr. President. Goodbye, Mr. Cronte. After a couple of minutes, I went back to reviewing the agenda. Lots of big decisions to make today, that's for sure. Ooh, goodness me. Supreme Court finds Governor Braun guilty. Today, the Supreme Court has charged Governor Braun for enacting the resettlement order, which discriminated against swords of different blood living in the special zone of Berger. The court ruled in favour of Ishvan Ersen's argument, and Governor Braun was fined and removed from office. However, the court did not agree with the other arguments put forward by Ersen and maintained the Constitution already provided rights for everyone. As a replacement for the governor, the Supreme Court ruled that in extraordinary circumstances such as this, the deputy of the governor shall assume duty until the end of the term instead of the president appointing a new governor. The deputy who will assume the office is Herbert Krall, an old member of the NFP. Not great that they're from the NFP, but we may not have a choice. The court's decision has garnered mixed reactions from the public, with some applauding the decision to hold the governor accountable for his actions, while others remain sceptical about the effectiveness of the ruling, citing the continuing discrimination against British people. Most of the British people of Berger condemned the decision, especially due to Governor Braun's replacement, who they believe may prove to be worse than Governor Braun. Yeah, that could be an issue, actually. I also read a statement from the General Staff. Earlier this week, the General Staff held a meeting in which Joseph had voiced his pleasure to work under the administration. According to rumours, Lancia said, "The current president is a man of tradition. He is strong and he is decisive. I had worked with President Sol before. I know President Sol. He is my friend. And I know that he is proud of what President Anton had achieved." You know what, Joseph? You're alright, sir. You're okay. Okay, request a meeting of Lucien Gallade. Lucien scheduled some time with me to discuss the potential political repercussions of the upcoming economy meeting. He arrived on time as usual and took his seat right across from me. "Good morning, Mr. President." Lucien had dark circles under his eyes. The plethora of political developments must be weighing even on a workaholic like him. "You look a bit tired. Are you getting enough sleep?" "I'm trying to, sir." "Don't push yourself too much. I need you. You're a very good right-hand man, more than Peter is. I must say, you don't look much better." I looked at myself in a small hand mirror. Smaller circles were beneath my eyes as well. Similar circles. I booked some of your time to pre-plan for today's meeting in the Ministry of Economy. Before you go into the economic direction, I want to give you a short status update. After you and Mr. Caben made your statement in the support of Solist constitutionalism, the Supreme Court prioritised the case and quickly announced a verdict. It's very clever of you to use Solism against them. They can't afford to look like hypocrites, so they must have had to move on to it quickly. The court realised that Felix Braun is to be relieved from his power as governor, or position as governor, for abusing his powers to discriminate. He is banned from serving in any political positions in the future and will be charged with a fine of 5 million Swedish ren. The resettlement policies of Berger are ruled to be unconstitutional and have been revoked. However, the court has also rejected Ersen's arguments about the constitution, ruling that all citizens of Sworland are swords regardless of ethnicity and are completely equal before the law. The results received a mixed response from the British community. Activists, radicals and BFS sympathisers have condemned the ruling. However, the majority seems to recognise that justice has been served. Thank you for informing me, Lucien. Do you have any idea on how we proceed? I don't think there's anything we need to do at the moment, sir. There's one more important detail. The seat of Berger must be filled. Normally the President appoints the Governor of the Special Zone directly. However, despite Miss Morgana's protests, the court decided to take a completely different route on this. Mr. Hawker argued that a premature departure of the Governor during their term is an exceptional case. They ruled that the Deputy of Governor Braun will assume his duty until the end of term. Mr. Caben might have played you, unfortunately. The deputy in question is a member of the NFP. I'm afraid the court delivered Berger straight to NFP's hands. This is very bad news. What do we do now? Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it, sir. Luckily, Mr. Cruel will not be able to resume any of his predecessor's unconstitutional activities. Of course, giving such a powerful position to a far-right nationalist is still very concerning. Luckily, Miss Graff is already working on the revocation of the special zone in Berger. We may still be able to get rid of Mr. Kroll that way. However, there might be a problem with its timing. It would likely to be right after the vote for the amendments. If the vote succeeds, we've been working for you. Your limited degree powers will be enough to enact to change this grant. I'm afraid you won't be able to enact this change without the approval of the Assembly in that scenario. It'd be very hard to convince them to revoke the special zone, but with Mr. Braun, an important fundraiser for the USP, gone, the party might be willing to move against Governor Kroll. I'm sure we'll find a way to convince the party by then. Of course, sir. I'm not sure I will. For now, let's return to the real reason we're here, our economic direction. We need to be cautious. Any grand plans about the economy also heavily influence on our political standing. We will be changing our relationship with the old guards, the oligarchs, and the opposition. As you know, this meeting will give you the opportunity to alter the ownership of the Big Four, the largest corporations in all of Swordland. We can start the process of nationalisation or privatisation, or we can just keep the status quo. Again, I remind you that any change will tip an already fragile balance. I personally think we should stay out of this and keep things as they are. There is no need to make new political enemies at this stage in our term, but ultimately the decision is yours. What do you lean towards, and how should we move forward? Ooh. We've got positive economic growth. I think I'd actually prefer to just avoid upsetting this economic stretcher, and we will maintain the status quo, because that keeps Caronte happy. It doesn't mean we put him in charge, and it also means we don't annoy the Lotherberg group. So I think that's what we'll do. Excellent, this is the safest way to victory. Lucian took a note in his sidebook. Although I think the oligarchs would like us to privatise everything, maintain the status quo will not disturb our relationship with them. This means more stability, economically and politically. Speaking of stability, some of my connections indicate there seems to be a contest for leadership in the Lotherberg group. It seems like Master Caronte is making moves to become the key figure. Caronte probably doesn't want his father seated at the head of the group, and thus doesn't want to let go of it. It's a significant power struggle, considering these are the heads of Swordland's two largest private corporations. Another reason why I'm supporting your decision to leave the situation as it is. There's no reason for us to interfere, directly or indirectly, in their internal struggles. Did Marcel Tusk contact you? I'll be honest with Lucian, because he's a good egg, I think. I received a call from Marcel. What did he ask for? He wanted to make a deal to leave the HOS untouched. And then I said I'd think about it. Very well. Was that all he wanted? He also wants me to nationalise Berger Steel to take down Tusk. As I expected. This internal conflict amongst the oligarchs puts us in an interesting position. Our relationship with Walter Tusk hasn't been good so far. Any move we now has to be calculated and thought through. Very well then, I'll cancel the meeting since we're not taking any actions. I must get back to work. I'm glad you made this decision. Thank you for your time, sir. I think it's the only real safe option we have, to be honest. I think anything else would be way too drastic. Let's have a quick look at the news. Increased support for Blues rights outside of Berger. New governor of Berger, Herbert Krull. Let's hope he'll be okay. Probably won't be, because this is the whole point of the game. Gasson returns fall short of the state for the state. Yes, that was annoying. And let's stress that this experience should guide future state investments. Absolutely. WPB, the Workers' Party, condemns the Supreme Court decision. Not great for us. And let's have a look here. Anything we need to keep an eye on? Doesn't seem to be as much there, although increased tensions are always a concern. Okay. The WPP argued that the Supreme Court is further perpetuating the marginalisation of British people and disregarding their legitimate demands for justice and equal rights. They call for a comprehensive review of the justice system to ensure fair treatment and equal opportunities for all citizens. I agree, but what choice did I have? The Unified Education Language Act. This is going to be the one I need to read carefully. It advances the Unified Education Act is to strengthen national unity and facilitate consistent comprehensive learning across Swordsland. Section 1 of the UELA stipulates that all educational institutions in Swordsland are required to conduct their teaching in the country's official language, except in case of foreign language instruction. To offer courses in any language other than Swordish, institutions must obtain explicit approval from the Ministry of Education. Any universities, technical colleges or other educational institutions how to be non-compliant will face a temporary suspension of operations until they apply for and receive the necessary approval. Section 2 underscores the enforcement of the Act. Schools found to be in violation of these guidelines may face penalties, which may include reduction or withdrawal of further funding. In severe cases or cases of persistent non-compliance, total shutdowns may be enforced. This enforcement mechanism reinforces the commitment to unified language policy, ensuring cohesive educational experience across the nation. My concern is that it's going to lead to some more issues with the Blue Dish, and we're not doing particularly well for the time being anyway. Economy, welfare, order. Let's have a look at order. We have managed to quell some nationwide protests. If I sign this, the nationalists will be happy, but at the same time there'll be issues with Bergia. But I'm going to sign it nonetheless. Could go wrong. Certainly don't like that impression of British people think that I just saw turn up. Whereas that is going to be in welfare. Diplomacy? No, it's not in diplomacy. It's going to be in law, isn't it? Yeah. More oppression of British people. Not ideal. Results of the economic direction. Let's have a look. The economic direction is positive. Surely that's a projected economic growth is positive. Olivia intercepted me in front of my office and informed me that I had a call from Walter Tusk. I entered and picked up the phone. President Rain speaking. Good afternoon. I heard some disturbing news. News about a deal between you and Marcel Caronti. What kind of deal? Oh, something about controlling the media. Listen to me carefully now, Rain. I suppress these rumours for you, for now. They will stay that way if you do what I say. What do you want? Let me tell you what I want first, and I'll let you decide. That damn boy, Marcel Caronti. I want him out of the equation. I found some evidence linking him to the Coronelli cartel, a powerful crime syndicate. What I want from you is simple. I'll feed the information to the officials. I want you to start an investigation into Heart of Swordsland. That is all I ask. That's not too much to ask, right? Is the information about the cartels verified? I wouldn't tell you that if it wasn't the case. Hear my words, Mr. President. If you want to keep being one... Ooh, bit of blackmail. I always thought that decision might come back to haunt me, and now we see. Ooh, Assembly vote on the constitutional changes. Do we want to do that in this episode or the next one? I think we'll leave this on a cliffhanger, and then next time we'll have our Assembly vote. Definitely a big day full of lots of big decisions, and some of them are going to come back to bite us, I imagine. Growth is looking positive. If we go to the overview, there's still a lot of red and yellow, but there's a few greens now as well. But obviously Bergia is having some issues and small businesses stagnated, as well as our welfare issues with failed education reform. So we're going to have some issues, but I think we're doing okay. We're managing to make some progress. Whether we will survive is a whole other question. For now though, take care. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.